An introduction to decimals. Decimals extend the place value system. We know that our place values, I'm getting ahead of myself. We know that our place values represent how many of a particular value we have. So in the hundreds, I have one lot of 100 here. I have 0 lots of 10. I have 3 lots of 1, so 103. When we get into the decimals, we've gone from 100 to 10 to 1. The first decimal place is tenths. I've got 5 lots of 1 over 10. 5 lots of a tenth. I have 0 lots of 1/100th. Sorry about my writing here. And 1 lot of 1,000th. And of course, I could write those instead of 5 times 1/10, I could write it as 5/10ths. I could write this one, the thousandths, as just 1,000th. So the decimals add fractions of a number to our place value system. So some things we have to be able to do with decimals. We have to be able to compare them. So which one's larger? If I'm comparing any number, I always start from the biggest digit first. So these both have 300s. I can't say anything about which is bigger yet. Both have 6010s. Both have 2 units. And they both have 5/10ths. So we're getting pretty small here, and we haven't found one that's bigger. But finally, 8 and 4, our first number has 800ths. Our second number only has 400ths. Everything else was the same up till now. Our first number is larger. And if I wanted to write that correctly, I'd say 362.581 is greater than 362.549. And remember, the greater than sign is a crocodile. That, of course, is very hungry and wants to eat the largest number. So the greater than sign has an open mouth facing towards the larger number. Now there's a lot of concepts here, so if you need to pause and think about them, you do that. Converting decimals to fractions. Now we can cheat and use our calculator, but let's check how it works. Count the number of decimal places. In the first one, there's 2, so that means I have 64 hundredths. And I take that 64 and put it over 100, and the number of decimal places that there were in my question, in my decimal, is the number of zeros that go to my power of 10. So there's 2 decimal places in my second question. That means I've got the number 2 over 100, 200ths. Now in both cases, if we can simplify, we do. So 64 over 100, look for the highest common factor. If you can't find a highest common factor, start with a lower one. We can see that they're both even, so 2 would go into them. So I could do 32 over 50. I've divided the top by 2 and I've divided the bottom by 2. And they're still both even numbers, which says, hey, we can still divide by 2. Divide by 2 on the top and bottom, 16 over 25, and now I don't see anything else that goes evenly into 16 or 25. Remember, we've got a cheaty fraction button on our calculator. 64 over 100 is 16 over 25. So we can check our simplification with our calculator. We can also check our fraction, 0.64, and I believe second function and the fraction key, oh no, some of the calculators will let you take a decimal back to a fraction, but this isn't the one I normally use, so I'm not certain. And of course, let's simplify our other fraction. That's 1 over 50, dividing by 2 on the top and bottom. If it was a different decimal, say 0.1, there's only one number after the decimal point. I'll put that number 1 over 10, and that's correct. We're saying there's 1/10, so it's quite easy. Converting fractions to decimals. If we're lucky and our fractions are over a power of 10, then it tells us this is 2/10, 0.2. A 2 in the tenths column. We also know that we can always convert fractions to decimals by dividing the top by the bottom, and we'll learn how to divide a number by a power of 10. And of course, there's always our friendly calculator. 2 divided by 10 is 0.2, or even 2 over 10. And there's surely a way, normally on your calculators you can change your fraction to a decimal, but divide, I don't like this calculator, but it was the best I could find. 30 over 100, that's 30 hundredths. Put our number taking up the same number of decimal places, and that's 0.3. If I'd wanted, I could have cancelled first by dividing by 10, and I'd have 3 over 10, and I know I've got 3/10. If my fraction isn't over 10, then my method is divide the top by the bottom. It's a good idea to learn some of the very common fractions. 1 divided by 4, nice and easy, 0.25. 2 divided by 3, oh, this is an interesting number. This is called a recurring decimal, 0.66666. It goes on with 6's forever. I know it's got a 7 here, but that's because they've had to round their final 6 because they can't fit it all into the calculator. We'll learn later how to write recurring decimals, but a quick start, if it's always going to be a 6, a dot on top or a bar on top says the 6 keeps going forever, or you can just round it to 2 decimal places, so 0.67. And finally, just remember, decimals and fractions, when we've got mixed numbers, the whole numbers are just whole number parts of the decimal. So the 8 means 8. And then 1/7, 1 divided by 7, oh, what a complicated number, 1.428571429. This is a tricky one. This actually is a recurring decimal, but it's a bit hard to tell. It looks like it just goes on forever, but we can see a pattern forming. So we can say that's 8.142857. But we'd probably learn how to round that. Sorry about my wrong 7 there. 8.25, if I wanted to write it as a fraction, well, 8 is a whole number, and 0.25, to change that 0.25 into a fraction, put it over 100 because there's 2 numbers, 2 decimal places, and see if we can simplify that. Highest common factor of 25 and 100. I'm going to divide by 25 on the top and 25 on the bottom. 25 divided by 25, don't forget to put down our 8. 25 divided by 25 is 1. 100 divided by 25 is 4. Oh, and we knew that a quarter was 0.25 because we saw it in the previous question. So lots of different concepts there. We need to understand decimals, compare decimals, which one is larger. We need to convert decimals to fractions and fractions to decimals. So lots of concepts to cover.